Okay, here we are, episode one, the Vintage Dad Life. So, this podcast, first of all, the main person I'm going to be speaking to is all you dads out there that had a child, or maybe all your kids, but at least one kid you had at 40 or over. This is also for you moms out there. So, if you moms want to hear about what the Vintage Dad Life is all about, get some parenting tips, see what other dads are thinking, saying. I'm going to be bringing on moms as well onto the podcast. This is also for anyone that likes to hang out with vintage dads. Who is this not for? Well, if you're a 25-year-old kid with no kids, then this ain't for you. Go on Snapchat, go on TikTok. You don't want to be on this page or this channel, that's for sure. Okay, so let's get started. Today's first episode, what I want to talk about is how to get your kids, how to raise kids that are going to be mentally strong. So, we're over 40 years old. We've been through a lot in our lives. Me personally, I've had ups and downs. I've had some wins in my life, yeah, but I've had some big losses too, and some things I'm not so proud of. But what I am proud of is being a dad. And I know all you dads out there feel the same way, especially if you're an older dad. You know, you've been through a lot in your life, and you want to make sure that you're raising your kids so they can avoid at least the big mistakes that you made. And you want to raise kids that are mentally strong. So how do you do it in this day and age? How do you do it with all these challenges that we're facing today? Well, like, I make fun of my wife a little bit because, she tends to get on Instagram a lot and follow these Instagram child psychiatrists that talk about the gentle parenting movement. Okay. So this isn't a knock on my wife. Actually, she brings great balance to me. So we're a great team. She's more on the gentle side. I'm more on the not too gentle side. So it's a great balance, but I make fun of her a little bit. So she sends me posts from these Instagram psychiatrists on gentle parenting. And a lot of that I really can't resonate with. I don't know what your stances are, what your belief is on how you parent. And if you go that route, that's fine. But here on the Vintage Dad Life podcast, our philosophy is the not too gentle parenting philosophy. Okay. So I still want to do my research. A lot of what my wife does and her philosophy on parenting, like I said, she brings balance to me. I can be a little bit too militant at times. So she comes in and brings in the softer side of the parenting style. So I do learn a lot from her. But for me, I personally go down my own path and my own journey of learning on how to be a really good dad, but also how to get results out of my kids as I'm raising them. And one of the most important things, I think, is raising kids that are mentally strong, because they're going to face a lot of challenges. We don't even know what they're up against in the future. But if they're mentally strong, they're going to be able to overcome anything. So what I did was I dove into, in today's video, we're going to be talking about this book right here, How to Raise Mentally Strong Kids. It's by Dr. Daniel Amen, who is very well known in the nutrition space, the brain health space. So he's got a lot of books on brain health and nutrition. And now he's diving in, and he teamed up with another author named Charles Fay, who has a program, and it's all about love and firmness with your kids. And I read this book and I thought it was great. It's got so many practical and logical things that you can implement today with your kids to really help them become self-sufficient and mentally strong. And it dives into everything from nutrition to how you should parent them, how you should react if they do make mistakes, things like that. I'm going to dive into a couple of the main parts of this and just give you an overall feel of this. However, what I do when I do read these books is I do a ton of outlining. Okay. So I outline all the main areas that I found helpful in this book. And then from there, I create an outline on a Google Doc, and I outline all the main important things so that, obviously when you read a big book like this, there's a lot of, filler words in there, and, it takes up a lot of time. So with my notes, you could just read my notes and you'll get the main concept of the book and be able to implement like that. So if you want those notes, all you have to do is like this video and subscribe to the Vintage Dad Life podcast channel and be one of my first subscribers. And if you comment that you want the notes, I will send you the notes. Okay. So the main part of raising mentally strong kids is overall, you want to allow your kids to make smaller mistakes and learn how to fix their smaller mistakes on their own independently so that they can avoid the big mistakes. And the authors give examples in the book. And for instance, one example might be, if your child did not get their homework done and they're going to go into class, if they don't have the homework done, they might get whatever. They might get a nick on their overall grade average. They might have to stay after school. Whatever the consequence is, there's going to be a consequence because their teacher is going to give them a consequence if they don't get the homework done, and it might reflect their grade. Now, for most parents, a bad grade is like, fear sets in. Well, if my kid gets a bad grade, then they're going to start sliding. They're not going to get into college. They're not going to get a job. They're going to become a bum. All these things start to play out in the parent's mind. You have to take a deep breath, take a step back, and, obviously communicate with your child about, well, you didn't get your homework done, or if you don't get your homework done, there's going to be a consequence at school. If you want my advice, I can help, but this is the way it's going to be. So you're basically putting the responsibility on your child. Now, is it possible that they're going to get a bad grade? Yeah, sure. They could get a bad grade. But the next time it happens, they know that it's on them and they're going to have to get the job done. So that's just one example. He goes into a whole lot of different examples, but the main thing is you really want to be your child's advisor, and you don't want to jump into telling them what to do. I know as parents, we want to, well, if we tell them what to do and force them into doing it, then it's going to get done and they're going to keep progressing. And that's not always the case. Sometimes when we do too much for our kids and, we kind of control or steer the vehicle, leading them to where we hope they'll go, then when we finally do give them the vehicle, they're all over the road. They don't know how to drive. So this way of parenting is you're telling them, okay, you should make a right, but only if you need my advice. I'm not going to tell you where to go, and you're their advisor. So my notes and in the book explains things a lot better, but that's one way of letting them make smaller mistakes so you could avoid the big mistakes. The other thing is, love and firmness. Parenting obviously from a place of love, being compassionate towards your child and empathetic towards your child, but at the same time, showing them firmness. Okay. I'm learning this right now with having a 2-year-old little boy. An infant right now adds to the balance. But raising a 2-year-old little boy, I'm learning the balance between love and firmness. Obviously, he's going to get a whole lot of love, and he does get a whole lot of love, but then there's also the firmness. And so some things I'm learning right now, raising a 2-year-old little boy, is they repeat everything. So being more careful with my words, because he's starting to repeat things and he knows exactly when to say it. Those special words, one starts with an S, one starts with an F. Once they start saying it, it's hard to get them to stop saying it. The other thing I'm learning is their need for focus time with you. So, taking at least 30 minutes a day where you're just, no phone, no TV, and you're just playing playing on the floor, you're playing on the couch, you're wrestling, you're reading a book, just giving them that time, that focus time makes a huge difference in how they respond to you. The other thing I'm learning is their need to use their bodies and climb, get in touch with their body. So my son, I guess around 1.5 or so, started climbing up on the couch. Then he would go on the the coffee table, stand up on the coffee table. In the beginning, we would freak out. I would yell at him, "You can't climb up there. You can't." And I would try to control that situation because obviously I didn't want him to get hurt. But the reality is, as I'm watching him, I can see how careful he actually is when he's climbing and getting up and getting down, which I actually started to appreciate because he's learning how to use his body, how to be careful when he does climb. So, letting them climb and do those things, obviously without being in danger of severely hurting themselves. There's certain areas where he can't climb, but I do let him climb and jump on the couch, you know, because I'm watching him and I'm seeing how he's doing it, and I'm seeing that he's actually controlling his body, and I think that's good for boys, for little boys to learn that. The other thing is the major thing with raising a 2-year-old boy as a 47-year-old man is being consistent with everything. I'm trying to be consistent with my reactions with him. I'm being consistent with, what his consequences are on certain reactions. I'm being consistent. We're trying to be consistent with his food, being consistent with his naps, being consistent with how we are on a daily basis. Obviously, sometimes I'm not in the greatest mood. Maybe I'm having a bad work day or somebody pissed me off, and I'm trying not to let it show with him. So everything with these kids right now is being consistent. That's what they need. And that's what they're learning too. The other thing I'm learning now is, giving my son consequences, little consequences when he does certain things. So he's getting into that mode of, yelling. So he's starting to yell back a little bit and test, especially with his mom. You know, he'll yell and scream back at her. She might blame it on me. It says he learns yelling from you, but I disagree with that. But certain things, certain times he might get, he might slap, he might hit or something. Typical little boy things, temper tantrums, certain things. Now I'm giving him consequences. I usually give him one warning, depending on how severe it is. If he screams at my wife, I give him a warning. And if he does it again, I simply take him by the hand, or I'll pick him up. I'll bring him to his room, and I'll tell him, now I told you we don't scream at mommy, and now you have to stay in your room by yourself. And I put him in his room and I close the door, and I'll leave, and he'll scream and cry, and he might even bang on the door, and I'll let him sit in there for a few minutes just to kind of feel the consequence. I won't leave him in there too long by himself, but I let him feel the consequence. And then I'll go back upstairs calmly. As soon as I walk in, he calms down because he knows that he wants to get out of the room, and he knows that he did something wrong. And I'll just explain to him what he did wrong. You're not supposed to yell at mommy. That's not nice. And do you want to come back downstairs and say you're sorry, and then hang out and play with us? Yes, Daddy. Okay. And that's it. And he comes back downstairs, and he's super calm, super happy, and super nice. So that seems to be working. And then finally, the need for naps. These kids still need naps when they're young. You might have older kids by now, but I have a 2-year-old, and he needs a good power nap in the middle of the day. Otherwise, he starts to get super cranky and super difficult at night. But when he has his nap, he's a great kid. He's always a great kid, but he needs his nap. So far, that's what I'm learning. So far, I'm focused on raising mentally strong kids, and I'm going to be diving into more books, learning more things, sharing I'm going to be bringing on people on this podcast to share. We're going to have some fun dad talk. We're also going to do a series on the podcast called Back in the Day, and we're going to talk about something, 80s style, 90s style, and that's what the Vintage Dad Life is all about. We were born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s, partied in the 90s, and now we're dads and family people in our 40s or 50s, however old you are. So for today, I'm gonna call it a day, and I will see you in the next episode. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below. And see you soon.